Sarah Mendez hadn't slept in 3 days. Not really slept. Not the kind of sleep that actually rests a person. She had closed her eyes a few times between shifts on the bus, in the break room at the diner where she worked the early morning shift. But sleep? No, sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Right alongside fresh fruit, new shoes for her kids, and hope. She was 34 years old and she looked 50. Every morning at 4:15 a.m., her phone alarm buzzed on the cracked nightstand beside the bed she shared with her two children, 8-year-old Lily and 6-year-old Marcus. She would lie there for exactly 45 seconds, staring at the water, stain on the ceiling of their one-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, doing the math in her head the way she did every single morning. Rent was $8.70. Utilities were running around $140 this month because of the cold. The school had sent home a notice asking for $12 for Marcus's field trip. Lily needed a new winter coat because hers had a broken zipper and the temperatures were dropping into the 20s. And the refrigerator had eggs, half a loaf of bread that was starting to turn, a container of margarine, and 3 apples that weren't going to last another 2 days. She would do the math, and the math never worked out. It never added up to enough, and then she would get up anyway. Splash cold water on her face, pull her hair back, and go. Job 1 was the diner. 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., 5 days a week. She made $9.50 an hour plus whatever tips came in during the breakfast rush, which on a good day was $40 and on a bad day was $11. Job 2 was a cleaning company, where she worked office buildings from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday for $11 an hour, no tips, no benefits, no sick days. Job 3 was weekend shifts at a grocery store, 6 p.m. Friday through Sunday evening, stocking shelves and running register, $10.25 an hour. She had done the calculation once, on a napkin at the diner during a slow Tuesday morning. She was working roughly 67 hours a week. After taxes, she was bringing home just under $1,600 a month. It was not enough. It was never enough. And she had nobody to tell. Her mother had passed 2 years ago. Her father had been gone since she was 9. Her ex-husband, the kid's father, had left when Marcus was 4 months old and Lily was still learning to read, and he had left no forwarding address and no child support trail worth chasing. She had one friend, a woman named Denise, who lived 2 floors up and watched the kids between Sarah's jobs, but Denise had her own problems, her own tight budget, and Sarah had too much pride to let anyone see exactly how bad it had gotten. She hadn't told anyone that she had started eating only once a day. She told herself it was a diet. She told herself she wasn't hungry. She told Lily and Marcus that she had eaten at work whenever they asked why she wasn't sitting down with them at the table. She would make them scrambled eggs and toast, or a bowl of soup if she had a can, and she would stand at the counter and watch them eat and feel something she didn't have a word for, something that was equal parts love and grief and rage, all pressed together into a hard thing that lived in the center of her chest. The morning everything changed started the same way every other morning had started. The alarm, the ceiling, the math, the cold water on her face. It was a Thursday in late November, 4 days before Thanksgiving, and the diner was decorated with paper, turkeys that the owner's grandchildren had made, and taped to the windows. Sarah moved between tables on autopilot, refilling coffee, taking orders, smiling the specific smile she had trained herself to produce on demand, wide enough to seem genuine, small enough to require no actual feeling. A man came in around 7:30 a.m. and sat in her section. He was in his 60s, white-haired, wearing a flannel jacket and work boots, the kind of man who looked like he had spent 40 years outdoors. He ordered black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, and a side of bacon, and he said thank you when Sarah brought the water, which some people did and a lot of people didn't. And she noticed that the way some people notice weather, briefly, without attaching meaning to it. She was running his food out from the kitchen when she heard it. Marcus's teacher, a woman named Mrs. Calloway, had called Denise's phone that morning because Sarah's own phone had been disconnected 2 days ago. She had chosen between the phone, bill and groceries, and the choice had been obvious, and Mrs. Calloway had called to say that Marcus had been giving his lunch away every day for the past 2 weeks. Marcus had been handing his school lunch to another kid in his class, a boy named Tyler whose family was also struggling, and Marcus had been sitting at the lunch table with nothing, telling the lunch aide he wasn't hungry. He was 6 years old. Sarah didn't know this yet. She wouldn't find out until that evening. Right now, she was just carrying 2 plates and a coffee refill and keeping that smile in place. And the hard thing in her chest was doing what it always did, which was sitting there quietly, waiting. The white-haired man, his name, she would later learn, was Gerald, ate his breakfast slowly and read a folded newspaper and did not ask for anything more than a single refill, which Sarah appreciated, because some mornings she was running 6 tables at once, and a low-maintenance customer felt like a small mercy. When he was done, he left his plate stacked neatly at the edge of the table, which she also appreciated, and he left $12 on top of the check for an 8:40 meal, and he put on his jacket and walked out. Sarah cleared his table and picked up the check and the bills and carried them back toward the register, and it was only then, only when she unfolded the receipt to process it, that she saw what was written on the back of it. He had used a pen, and the handwriting was careful and deliberate, the handwriting of someone who didn't write quickly or carelessly. It said, "I watched you work this whole morning. You never stopped moving. You never stopped smiling. I don't know your story, but I know that kind of tired. I know what it costs. My wife worked like that for years before I made her stop, and I never told her enough times what it meant. Under the register, there's an envelope with your name on it. It's been there since yesterday. I come in here every Thursday. I've been watching for someone who needed it. That's you. No strings, no charity. Just one person seeing another. Gerald." Sarah read it twice. Then she read it a third time. She stood completely still in the middle of the diner for a moment that felt much longer than it was, the receipt in one hand and the $12 in the other, and one of the line cooks said something to her from the kitchen window, and she didn't hear it. She went to the register, and there, taped to the inside of the cabinet beneath it, was a small white envelope with the words Sarah written on the front in the same careful handwriting. Inside the envelope was $2,000 in cash and a folded piece of paper that said only, "Get your kids through winter. You're doing the right things. Keep going." She stood there and she did not cry. She would cry later, in the walk-in cooler, with the door closed for about 90 seconds, which was all she allowed herself. But in that moment she simply stood at the register with the envelope in her hands and felt something shift inside her chest. Not the hard thing breaking, something underneath it. Something that had been sealed off for so long she had forgotten it was there. It felt like being seen. She didn't tell anyone at the diner. She folded the envelope and put it inside her apron and finished her shift and took the bus to the office buildings and cleaned for 5 hours and thought about it the entire time. She thought about what $2,000 meant in real specific terms. It meant rent covered for 2 months. It meant the utilities caught up. It meant a winter coat for Lily and new sneakers for Marcus, whose left shoe had a hole in the toe that he had stopped mentioning because he knew she knew and he didn't want her to feel bad. It meant food, actual food, a full refrigerator, more than eggs and bread. It meant she could take 1 shift off per week maybe, and be home when her kids got off the school bus instead of leaving them with Denise until 9 p.m. It meant breathing room, just enough, just barely. That evening, when she got home and Denise came down to tell her about Marcus and the lunches, Sarah sat down on the kitchen floor, not in a chair, but the actual floor, with her back against the cabinet, and she let the crying happen for real this time. Not the 90-second controlled version, the real version, the kind that comes from somewhere deeper than sadness, the kind that is made out of 2 years of holding it together and pretending and calculating and smiling on demand and eating once a day and watching her children's faces and being so tired, so profoundly tired, that the bones themselves felt like they were made of something heavier than bone. Marcus heard her from the bedroom and came out in his socks and pajamas and sat down on the floor beside her without saying anything. And then Lily came and sat on her other side. And the 3 of them sat there on the kitchen floor with the overhead light buzzing slightly and the heat making a sound in the pipes. And Sarah put her arms around both of them and held on. She told them they were going to be okay. She had said those words before, many times, in the specific tone of voice that meant, "Please believe this, even though I'm not sure I do." But this time, she said it differently. She said it the way you say something when you actually mean it. When the words have weight, because they're attached to something real. They were going to be okay. Not because a stranger's $2,000 solved everything. It didn't. The system was still broken. The wages were still wrong. She would still be working 3 jobs next week and the week after. And the math would still be tight. And some months would still come down to impossible choices. None of that had changed. But something else had changed. The thing that had been sealed off inside her chest, that small, stubborn, nearly extinguished thing, had been cracked open by one man and one receipt, and 4 lines of careful handwriting, and what was inside it turned out to be something she recognized. Something she had carried so long she had forgotten she was carrying it. It was the belief that she was worth seeing, that her exhaustion was real and it mattered, that the way she moved through the world, quietly, without complaint, without asking for anything, was not invisible, even when it felt that way, that somewhere in the machinery of a hard life, a person could look at another person and choose to say, I see you. I know what this costs. Keep going. She thought about Gerald the whole next day and the day after that. She had no way to find him, no last name, no number. He came in on Thursdays, the note said. She worked Thursdays. She would see him again. 3 weeks later, he came back. He sat in her section, same table, same order. Black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, bacon. And when she brought him his water and said thank you, she meant it in a way that the word usually isn't meant, in a way that carried everything she didn't have language for. And he looked at her and nodded once, the way people nod when they understand, and that was all. She put Lily's new coat on her that morning before school. It was green, with a hood, and Lily had picked it out herself, and she had worn it around the apartment for 10 minutes before they left, running her hands over the sleeves like it was something precious. Marcus had stopped giving his lunch away. He ate now. Every day he ate. And Sarah ate dinner that night, sitting at the table, in a chair with her children, like a person who had time for it. She made spaghetti with meat sauce from a recipe her mother used to make, and the 3 of them sat there in the yellow light of the kitchen and ate together, and nobody had to pretend. Outside, the Columbus winter was doing what it always did, pressing in cold and gray and indifferent. But inside that small apartment, at that small table, something was warm that had been cold for a very long time. And Sarah Mendez, 34 years old, 3 jobs, 2 kids, 1 broken city, looked at her children's faces and felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, something that wasn't just survival. It was enough. And tonight, it was everything.